All right, themes in Ethan Frome. Okay, so very clearly at the top, yours is not highlighted, but this one is. Now that we've completed reading and analyzing Ethan Frome, we will move forward and analyze how the themes in this reading reflect on modern society. You will select one of these broad themes to narrow. So let me be very clear. These are not your topics. These are your themes. And then you have to narrow them into topics. And there's a lot of work involved. So please set aside that time for yourself so you can do it right. I do not want an essay on determinism and free will. I want an essay on a subject related to that. Okay. So you're not going to write about the book. Instead, you're going to explore the themes you've selected and how it relates to society in general. So nobody should be saying, okay, that's my topic, I'm going to write about that. No, you're not, because it's not the assignment. Your topic will be related to that, but that's not your topic. That's a broad theme that you have to narrow down in order to create your own topic. And that's fundamental for English 100 is to learn this. All right, so this is one of the themes from the book Determinism and Free Will, and I'm going to show you how it was presented in Ethan Frome, and then you, when you do your brainstorming, will think about ways that you see it presented in our current society. Okay, so in Ethan Frome, Wharton explores the concept of determinism, the idea that human lives are determined by outside forces, including social customs, heredity, environment, history, and laws of nature. That's what you would be exploring, the ones in bold. And those are not your topics either. You're going to brainstorm them to create your own topic. So for instance, Ethan's life is determined in a variety of ways. His desire to become an engineer is thwarted by the moral necessity of returning to Starkfield to care for his dying parents. His plans to leave Starkfield after his marriage are thwarted by the infertility of his farm, which no one wants to buy, and his wife Zena's sickliness, which is greatly exaggerated because she's a manipulator. And Ethan's desire to abandon Xena in favor of Maddie is blocked by the feeling imbued in him by his New England culture with its Puritan roots that such an action would be immoral. As a result, Ethan has a sense that he is helpless to affect his own life, and rather than acting, he indulges in his naive wish that Maddie will always live at the farm without him having to do anything decisive at all. Despite all these factors, Ethan could act decisively. Other characters in the novel do. Ruth Varnum and Ned Hale kiss secretly even though they aren't yet married. That is scandalous. Mr. Hale turns down Ethan's request for an advance because he can't afford it at the time. And that's Ethan's wood. You know, he doesn't have to give it to him. And Xena summarily acts to replace Maddie with a new girl, even though Maddie is her family. Yet every time Ethan seems on the verge of action, he finds himself facing some obstacle, and instead of facing it, he gives in, all the while blaming the external forces that are thwarting him without ever recognizing his own lack of courage. So I would think about other types of situations that are occurring in the world that are when people tend to act as if they have no choice in the matter, but they really do. Like people who don't go to college because they feel like they have to work full time for their family. I'm talking about myself right now. When I was younger, I quit college in order to support my mother and my brother. So I understand, you know, how family guilt can get in the way. And then I ended up going back, obviously. But so things like that, where people don't do the things they want to do because they feel like obstacles are going to stand in their way. But this also ties into duty and morality versus desire, where we don't do the things we want to do because we think we have to do things. So there's a fine line here. And here's how it's shown in the novel. Ethan struggles against the customs and rules of society, fighting an inner battle between what he feels he needs in order to be happy and what he feels he must do to appease his family and society. Most prominently, this theme plays out in Ethan's struggle between his desire for Maddie and his sense of duty towards Zena, his wife. So we all have things we want to do and things that we know that we should do. Right now, I would like to just go back to bed, but I need to make this video, and so I'm going to do it, and then I'll go back to bed. So, I mean, but beyond that, there are things that we would love to do. I would have loved to just go on an extended European vacation instead of find jobs and go to work, right? But I had to. I don't know why somebody's in the waiting room. I'm just going to close it. This is not an actual meeting. This is a video I'm creating for you to watch later. And the way to use Zoom is to set it up as if it's a meeting, but no, it's not a meeting. All right, so going on. Wharton portrays Zena as horribly shrewish, devoid of any redeeming attributes, while Maddie is kind, gentle, radiant, and a perfect match for Ethan. Ethan's desire to leave Zena for Maddie is therefore completely understandable. Yet, because Ethan knows that society would severely judge a man who abandoned his wife, and because he knows that without him Zena would suffer in poverty, he can't bring himself to leave her. Similarly, Ethan avoids entering into an affair with Maddie because he knows that an affair would ruin Maddie's reputation. He therefore continually thinks of their relationship in terms of marriage, takes great pleasure in their domesticity, and displays an intense physical shyness, avoiding even touching Maddie when they are alone together in the house. Ethan's sense of duty and morality conflict with his desires in a variety of other ways. His desire to leave Starkfield to pursue a career in engineering conflicts with his obligation to provide for his wife and continue running the family farm. His strict code of ethics won't allow him to lie to the Hales to get the money and run away with Maddie. Even in his great act of defiance, when Ethan and Maddie decide to commit suicide to try to escape the constraints placed on them by the world, Ethan can't stop thinking about his duties. As the sled speeds downhill, he remembers that he must feed his horse and thinks of Zena. These distractions make him lose control of the sled and botch the suicide attempt, crippling instead of killing himself and Maddie, and condemning them both to a kind of living death. So spoilers again. So we have things we want to do and things we know we should do, and there's a bunch of conflict there. And if you can think of topics that relate to that, that's what you would be brainstorming. Not the theme itself, but the topics that you brainstorm regarding the theme, which we'll get to next. The next one is gender roles in marriage. If you've already just explored this in your previous essay, you want to not do it again here. This is a completely different essay though. So maybe you do want to do it. Maybe you want to look at it in more complex detail. Definitely it's a completely different assignment. Your focus will be different. Maybe you do want to do that. Maybe, yeah, that might be okay. All right, so gender roles in marriage. As in many of Wharton's novels, Ethan Frome makes the case that traditional gender roles limit the potential of men and women and destroy male-female relationships. Through Maddie, the novel critiques gender expectations that resulted in young women being raised to become nothing more than domestic servants and companions for men. Maddie is an example of a middle-class girl who was educated only to trim a hat, make molasses candy, recite poetry, and play the piano, accomplishments that would have helped her to attract a husband, but were of little practical use when it came to earning a living. The novel also shows how the traditional division of labor and marriage resulted in women staying at home much of the time, occupied with dull household chores, while men were out working. In the novel, the isolation women suffer is literally maddening. Ethan's mother goes insane from loneliness. Through the passive-aggressive sickliness that Xena uses to control Ethan, and Ethan's own feelings of inferiority and revulsion for Xena that result from his lack of control, the novel shows how traditional marriage sets up a destructive power struggle between man and wife. In fact, Ethan's attraction to Maddie depends in part on her submissiveness to him. Though the novel never explicitly mentions divorce, the obviously flawed match of Ethan and Xena and the toll the marriage takes on both of them makes it clear that Wharton felt that the social taboo against divorce, and in particular divorced women, were harsh and destructive. So there's a lot to brainstorm there. The next one is work, industry, and progress. So technology, symbolized in Ethan Frome by the railroad, was developing rapidly at the turn of the century. Cities were growing, their populations swelled by the arrival of immigrants and people from the countryside, lured by jobs in factories and mills. Young women in particular often suffered serious health problems owing to the harsh working conditions that existed before protective labor laws were passed. In rural communities, technology provided new connections to the outside world, but also caused upset and change, as shown by the arrival of the railroad, which eliminates traffic on the road to the Frome farm. So how is work, industry, and progress affecting us in our modern lives? And I'm thinking of the vaccine in particular. Even though I believe that the vaccines were developed in other countries, we are manufacturing them here. And we have been trying to manufacture masks and ventilators, and we definitely have seen some changes in how we work and where we work specifically, and I think that would be very interesting to explore. This next one, hostile or indifferent nature. In the rural Berkshires, where Ethan Frome is set, the characters are at the mercy of nature. The short New England growing season and thin mountain soils discouraged large-scale agriculture, ensuring that most farms, like the Frome farm, allowed for only subsistence farming that prevented farm owners from overcoming poverty. In addition, as Harmon Gow's comment that Ethan has been in Starkfield too many winters suggests, the prolonged and brutal winters of the region had a profound effect on the personalities of the inhabitants of rural villages, resulting in reserved social behavior, a tendency toward pathological illness, especially in women, and a sense of disconnectedness from the larger world. So if I were going to choose this hostile or indifferent nature, I might want to write about climate change and maybe what happened in Texas and the number of hurricanes and things